Hello, this is Brainwash with Gerald. Podcasting from beautiful South Jersey. Brainwash, the podcast that cleans your brain. Hey, it's May 27th. Welcome to the show. Today I have been working on my article about Hamlet. Okay, I've been talking about Hamlet a lot. It's one of those things, that occupy your mind and basically turn everything upside down. So a little backstory about me. I came here to this country many years ago, basically because I was curious and basically just to stay here for 2 years maximum, and then 2 years became 24 years now. And so I was the stay at home dad. I'm not crying. I was a stay at home dad for all these years. I went back to school, tried different careers, all that stuff. You know how that stuff goes. But I was never able to commit to something 100% because there were other priorities. That's how those things go. So now I'm like, the kids are gone, and I'm still fucking figuring out what I want to do. So I was raised in the Netherlands. I always liked reading and writing, so I've been doing that most of my life. Actually, I was writing the school newspaper and the church weekly. My God. And went to journalism school, and then in here I went to theater school to become a playwright, believe it or not. So I have always been writing, but writing is probably one of the most difficult things there is, and it's also one of the most easiest things there is. So let me explain the latter. It's not very hard to write a play or to write a movie or to even write a book at all. You have to write 50,000 words. That's your book. That's what most people do, I'm afraid. Most writers just write a book, but what makes a book interesting, what makes a book great, that's, we don't really have a formula for that. Plays are even more difficult. I had a friend, she passed away. Her name was Nancy Wogans. We met at a writer's seminar at Rutgers in 1997-ish. And she became not only a good friend, but also like a surrogate grandmother for my kids, because we were here and our family was over there. And she was just a wonderful, warm person. She moved to Berkeley, California, to be with her kids. She was already retired at the time. So she passed away. She was late 80s, maybe 90s. And her daughter, I had contact with her a little bit about after she passed, and she said she had a ball her last 20-some years. So I was happy about that. Years ago, we were in the writers' group together, and she always said, when we were talking about playwriting, like if you go to the bookstore, there's shelves and shelves of excellent world-class literature, and how many good plays are there really? Like really good plays, a play you want to see at any time of the day, and granted, there's not that many. A few by Shakespeare, certainly not all of them. Chekhov, Ibsen, Brecht, Tennessee Williams. Miller, I'll be, if you want to add a few Americans, Heiner Müller, just because I like it myself. But that's let's see, and then there's Molière, of course, and then the Greeks, some of the Greeks, because they have to be there. But that's about it. That's your bookshelf. That's the Oscar Wilde. And what makes a play great, like really great? What makes a book really great? And that's and as any other writer, that's my ambition, to write something that's a large amount of people will appreciate. And that's your biggest is it a trap or a demon? Let's think about that. What is it? It's a if it's a demon, it will stop you from writing because you want to avoid facing that demon. So that would not be a good comparison. A demon is more like someone in your life you can't really deal with very well. A demon can be something that's in yourself. Fear is maybe a demon, something you have to fight. Fear of failing. But I think the ambition can be it's more like a trap of sorts, that you want it to be so great, so that you kind of lose, not perspective, you lose, literally, you lose your sight. You set your sight on something which prevents you from watching what's happening in front of you, and you will stumble and fall. And the other thing is that sense of gratification we all yearn. We want to have we want to be satisfied. We want to do it now. And especially in these times, and not Corona times, but in the times where there are so many writer schools, there's so many books being published. It's everything has been done. How the hell are you going to stand out? How are you going to be, your own voice? Because there's this huge wall or fortress you have to penetrate. Nobody wants you. Nobody wants to see more writers. Nobody wants to see more playwrights or film scripts. No one. You, in this case, I have to do it myself. Be my own worst critic and get to a point where I think that this is what I would like to read. Maybe that's the standard. What do I want to read? This is what I would buy. And these traps have traps inside them. Yeah, so you walk into a trap, and then there's another trap door and a booby trap, what have you, spikes. It's like any of the Harrison Ford movies. And there's the other danger. The other danger is that you are stopped by the observation that whatever you do, be it a painter or a photographer, whatever, is so different from all the other people that you think it's not good because it doesn't compare to the work the people you admire make. And so that can mean two things. It can be fantastic and brilliant and genius, but chances are that it's just crap. That's the reason why you're making it different, is because you don't know what you're doing. And then by default, you create something that's unique, but it's uniquely bad. But if your default position is it's going to be bad, that doesn't help you. And if your default position is I'm the genius, that's not going to help you either. I mean, the worst thing you can do is say, I wrote this brilliant book, and then to find out that it's shit. That's the worst thing. The best thing that can happen is that you show someone your work. Well, that's why I always went to like writers' conferences and writers' groups. I was begging for someone to say, go, don't give up your day job, or go find a real job or something like that. But it was always like, yeah, this is, it's okay, but there was these little things and blah 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 blah. And then you keep going, just like you're being, like you're tied in, and you can't really escape from it, and you just have to keep going. So again, now, so here I am writing this article, dreaming of the New Yorker magazine like everybody else does, and I know it's not going to be in the New Yorker, but it's like, because they don't publish articles like this. I can't help myself. I try to keep it clear and simple. I don't want to use complicated sentences. And went later in life, switched over later in life. I don't count the kids, people who came here as kids. They got to the school system and all that. I had to learn. I had to learn it. I'm still learning, and I also, just like I had to learn Dutch when I got into college. I couldn't write. My spelling was god awful, and I got mangled that first year. But I worked on it. I studied. I got very quickly. I realized the things I didn't know, what I did wrong, and it was fine after that. Although I was not it was also a very bad school. I think a very bad school. It's called. It was the Christian Academy of Journalism in Kampen. And later on, that they merged with a school called Windesheim University. I think it's better now. I hope it's better now. But I had so for my final project, I had like a national scoop, and they were like, D+. So it was nothing wrong with that. And then afterwards, in retrospect, what bothered me most of it is the fact that I didn't fight it. I was just so I guess intimidated by these people. They were all my graduation committee, they were all like experienced journalists. So I was like, oh, they must be right, I must be wrong, and that's not a good thing. And that's also, I don't want to get into that too much, but that's also part of how you grow up. If you grow up like in a very conservative, Orthodox, Protestant environment, you're not being encouraged to argue and to speak up. Mm. And you're learned to be fearful and submissive to your superiors. And even though I did for it, but it's something that becomes part of your fabric without knowing it. It's like they mix it through your tea. You know what I mean? It's like a secret potion. And I don't think they do it on purpose, but they did it. It's done. It's like it's very hard to get away from that kind of stuff, and I'm still having a hard time fighting authorities. No, that's wrong. I'm not having a hard time fighting authorities when there's something when it's about wrong and right, but it's when it's something about me. If I have to come for my own personal interest, I have a hard time with that. If I'm working on behalf of an organization like an interest group, I have no issues, or if it's about spouting my opinion about stuff, no, I'm not afraid at all. But when it comes to, I don't know, asking for a raise or telling my boss don't like the way he operates, that's something your body almost objects to. It's kind of weird. Anyway, so go back to the Shakespeare thing. So the article is basically about why I think Hamlet is supposed to be a comedy, a joke. A very sarcastic joke, as a matter of fact. I'm not going to tell you the whole article. One of the aspects I really which really became clear while I was writing it, is the idea of how we experience a performance. And so that comes down to tragedy and comedy subtitle. So Hamlet, the tragedy, blah blah blah. So Hamlet, in my perspective, Hamlet when it was produced, it was a tragedy, but a tragedy for the characters in the play. It was their tragedy. It was not our tragedy. These people were different from us. These were other people. And at some point in the history, we humans saw ourselves on stage. So it was not Hamlet, the crazy Dane. No, it's my issues he is addressing, my insecurities. And in addition, that idea of us identifying with upper classes, most people are, what they call lower middle class, whatever. If you want to put it that way. So most people, and I'm talking 98% are not extremely wealthy. And if you want to compare the wealth of the Danes at that point in time, they were in the 99.99999% of the world. Literally, they were probably among the wealthiest people in the world at the time. From stealing from people, but that's another story. You should read the article. I'll explain it. So at some point we started identifying with these so-called tragic heroes. They also became tragic heroes. I think Shakespeare would be puking in his grave when he saw that. But anyway, so Shakespeare, I don't know if you noticed, but they didn't produce Shakespeare for, I don't know, until the late 1700s, and then Schiller discovered it, made a German translation of Hamlet, and this was around the time where Goethe published. Goethe was a German romantic, and he was the one. I think he was one of the first individual authors, like someone who created an individual, personal work of art. And one of his most famous at the time was the Bert Nederland story, and in which this poor boy, heartbroken, committed suicide, and there was a suicide, and as a result from that story, many young boys all over Europe committed suicide just out of a romantic feeling of heartbreak or whatever you want to call it. And I think around that time, so end of the 1700s, early 1800s, we as a Western people started putting ourselves in the center. I think that's that would be the explanation. We put ourselves in the center of the universe, and the universe was serving us. Yeah. So everything was about us. That's why the industrial revolution had nothing to do with improving our standard of life. It has to do with making a few people very wealthy at the expense of millions of people. You should read Friedrich Engels about how he describes the situations in these factories, and it is appalling. It's appalling. But if you are in power and you think the world's turning around you instead of the other way around, you don't care about people who don't look like you. In this case, they don't look like you because they didn't have any teeth, and they didn't wash, and they had raggedy clothes, and in other countries they had a different color, which is basically easier because you could make up some sort of theory explaining that these people were like an underclass of people. I mean, just to be sure, and I had an argument about this with my son, almost killed me, like literally exploded from anger. But I tried to explain to him that racism is an invention. That in Shakespeare's time there was no racism, because we didn't. First of all, we did not know what race was, because we didn't start categorizing plants and animals until later on. But also the idea that there were stratifications of people based on color and physical features that did not exist. In those days, so we're talking. I mean, what we the end of the Middle Ages, people still believed in God. First of all, the devil, the hell, and they believed that everybody, the whole world, was created by God, and all the people in it were His children. And we had to save all those people. Of course, they weren't part of the Christian empire. They were the innocents, and the people in Africa, they were. I mean, of course, they had to find some sort of explanation for black people. So what they came up was with the idea that one of Noah's sons, the one who fornicated on the boat and was banished from the family, he was the father of Black Africa, so to speak. He was the first African in the minds of the middle people in the Middle Ages. And I have to tell you, I'm not up to speed when it comes to the history of slavery, but I'm pretty sure that that slavery or the slave trade, what became the slave trade later on, was not happening in Europe at the time. That doesn't mean that was not something like slavery or indentured workers or what have you. But the scientific racism that later on was formulated and was, basically validating the slave trade, that did not exist at the time. And also, I think we should also think about how the stratification we know now in for instance, the United States, you got the 1%, and you have all these layers: the middle class, upper middle class, lower middle class, poor, really poor. That's only a part of what the stratification would look like in the Middle Ages. I mean, I think there were all kinds of subclasses, very strictly defined in those days by clothing, by how people looked. So, for instance, so you had the owner class, but you had also gradations in that. So we had the big wigs and the smaller wigs and what have you. And then you have all these guilds, merchants, farmers, big farmers, small farmers, and then an endless amount of people in the service industry: the smiths, the bakers, the people who made clothes, people who made shoes, people who made furniture, and they all had their own hierarchies. It's themselves, their guilds. You had the people who were outside of the guilds. The Jews were known for not being able to join guilds, so they had to fight their own way to make money. And then you had the artists and the traveling salesmen and the hookers and bookies and what have you. That whole Vegas part of society, it was kind of also a different planet, basically, with their own hierarchies, their own royalties. But don't forget the Middle Ages. If you were a performer or a prostitute or someone who was kind of outside of society, you were not part of that beautiful Christian reality, so you were not allowed to be buried in sacred grounds. As an actor, were supposed to be buried somewhere along the river or on a separate place. So that's why it's so interesting that Shakespeare was buried in a church, because he was not your ideal Christian. Let me tell you that. There's a lot of. It's kind of funny to read literature about Shakespeare, especially this English, about how they have tried to clean up his image. Oh no, Shakespeare would never frequent prostitutes. That was Mr. Partridge. He wrote a book called Shakespeare's Body. And that's another interesting tidbit. Tidbit is that the neighbors at the Globe Theatre were a bunch of Dutch prostitutes who owned and operated the Holland Leger, which was the most prominent, most expensive brothel in all of England or Britain, right next door to the theater. But no. Shakespeare just was a good Christian, and he would turn his face when he would walk by. So my take on this is that, I'm sure these women were also in the theater and doing their business and what have you, and that was all. I cannot imagine that they were separated from each other. And it's by the way, because I'm Dutch. Because I'm Dutch, I'm of course extra interested, and it's kind of fun to see, interesting to see this group of women operating this business basically, and doing very well at it too. So I think the owner was Elizabeth Holland. I don't know if she's related to Hugh Holland, one of the people who wrote one of the forewords in the folio, but it would be interesting to look at. Anyway, I'm kind of drifting off in Shakespeare world, as you can recall. So I'm going back. Let's go back to the article. So and this is maybe a good example. Like in there's a choice you have to make. Do I want to tell this story of how I think reality is, or do I want to make an argument, a scientific argument? And what would that entail? Can I just refer to literature, or do I really have to delve into it and come up with an article with bibliography and 60 different books and articles? So the choice I have to make is, do I want to write a story that's accessible to a larger audience and still make a point, or do I have to convince a handful of scholars of my opinion that Shakespeare only wrote comedies? And then another question would be, what the hell do I want? Why do I want to write this article? Anyways, what's the point? Well, the point is that, and this goes back to the title of this podcast. I think the point is that we've been duped all these years by all this bullshit that's been written about him. It's just insane. I've been reading a lot, because I do look up facts, and it's shocking what people write. I've never seen so many people so full of themselves, like jumping on Shakespeare's back, and they go like, "Well, I'm just like Shakespeare. I can write very proficient as well." Blah 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 blah. I think that's what I want to do. I think I want to liberate Shakespeare from academia. I don't know what the hell people were thinking. Getting PhDs in Shakespeare. What the hell is that about? I think Shakespeare wrote for the people. Literally for the people. He wrote for the suckers who had a few extra pennies to see those plays and have some fun. That's what he did. What I want to do essentially is give Shakespeare back to the people. It sounds kind of pathetic, but what I'm trying to say is that most people I talk to about Shakespeare, they say, "Oh, it's hard to read, hard to understand," and that is because academia has usurped the work, and I want to scrape that off, just like they scrape off dirt and smoke from medieval paintings to reveal beautiful colored works. There's this one work in Ghent, Belgium, by Jan van Eyck. He painted this triptych for the church there in the 1438, I believe it was. It was and it was recently cleaned, and one of the things that came out was that the Lamb of God had been altered like 100 years later. So the Lamb of God at the painting we have seen for all these years looks like a sheep, but when I took off that layer of paint, it turns out Jan van Eyck painted it as a human, with the eyes looking forward and pouty pink lips with like a smirky smile on its face. And I think that's what I want to do. I think I want to get all that crap out of Shakespeare and show it what it was really, really meant to be. Because the way we see it there's nothing to do with Shakespeare. The whole idea that you are in a theater and you see these people performing this religious piece of I don't know, this beautified, sanctified text in the dark, in quiet. It doesn't make any sense. If you really read it, you can tell that whoever was performing these pieces was not having a good time, in the sense that everybody was listening. There's a lot of force in that language where you really have to not only overshout people, but also have room for repeat. That you have to almost convince the audience that every word is worth something. Every word you say has a value. And when we go to see Shakespeare now, we are just more impressed by the fact that people are able to memorize all those lines and spew them out than by the actual performance, because there's no more, the interaction part is gone. There's no interaction. They just do, it's dead as a doornail. And it's not because of the actors, by the way. It's not because of them. It's because of us in the audience. We sit there and keep our mouths shut. We expect reverence. We expect to see some sort of light shining through from history, from this genius master. And what I want to do is I want to explain why that's wrong. And what I'm going to do is right now I'm working on the introduction, and I'm going to just go through the play and describe the different scenes, how I see them, and then hoping I can convince someone, some director or producer, and to see if we can put it up somewhere, and show how it's supposed to be done. And then from a philosophical, political point of view, I would like to the message, if you will, is that we as people have become zombies. We have lost our critical minds. Why the hell are we not allowed to speak in a theater? Whoever made up that rule? Why can't we? Your phone goes off. You open up a candy wrapper. You get scolded. What the hell is that about? That's insane. That's not what theater is. It's never been like that. Theater is a communal event. It's not a church. God damn it. I did a show once where people were supposed to ask questions, some people in the audience, and nobody did because they had no clue what to ask. There's no curiosity. We're just being lazy. We're just so used to being entertained with television day in, day out that we lost our skill to interact with people on the stage. That's why I don't get stand-up comics. I don't get that. I think it's more fun when people respond to them, but they kind of hung up on that whole idea that you have to shut up. You can't, I don't get that. I know, yeah, it's a tough job, and I get that, and it's hard to make people laugh, but you can set it up differently. You can set it up more improvisational, or even challenge people. Have some fun. Jesus Christ. Yeah, it feels like a power thing, actually. It's a power thing. We want to have power over other people. That's what it is. Yeah, I can go on like this forever. I can go play by play and explain, how I think it should be done. But of course, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go. Actually, I'm going to go today. What is it? Wednesday. I have to finish waxing a boat, believe it or not. So I'm going to do that, and then have a drink with a good friend of mine. And that should be it for the day. As for me, how am I holding up in this epidemic? I think I'm very subdued, sort of, usually, but I think I'm moving into the anger phase. I don't know. I'm getting pissed about a lot of things. So that's something I have to deal with, and something I might talk to you about in the next podcast. Thanks you for listening.